We are back. It is the Clearing the Crease podcast powered by BODOG.net. My name is James Cybulski. He is the Stanley Cup winner, Mike Commodore. Commie, look at that flow. Looking so gorgeous. Usual, man.
I still got it. I'm going for a little trim today because I'm starting to look like a tennis ball.
Oh,
so
come on. I want that
just a little
afro
trim.
back.
I can't just
Style.
let it go
Style.
He is the Calder Trophy winner, Andrew Raycroft, the Razor basket. You were just in Portugal, weren't you?
I was. Oh man, what a country, what a place. Highly recommend it to everybody. Yeah, it was
Where were
awesome. Did Lisbon for 4 days and then went down south to the Algarve. Beaches, surfing, spectacular. Really. And like the best is like $3 wine, like you just hang and it's beach life. Good life.
And $3 wine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All those free agency contracts paying off there, Razor.
Oh, yeah.
$3
exactly.
wine.
Yeah, that's why I need $3 wine. I don't go to France and get the $20 one. That's how my free agency went.
Oh, speaking of which, okay, lots to get into. Hey, this is all about Razor. We've got Razor, Ray Ferraro. Yes, he has 400 goals in the National Hockey League and one of the best analysts in the game for the last several years. Ray Ferraro is going to join us coming up a little later on in the show. Hey, look, it is summertime. It also means we've got all the on-ice action at BODOG. It's hotter than ever. All the futures, the new season's around the corner, so got to get your early action in. Pick your cup winner for next season at BODOG.net. It's got you covered for futures actions that'll keep you in the game, shape you all summer long. In the meantime, BODOG also has you covered for all MLB baseball action. You can find props, game lines, futures, make your home run picks, score big with BODOG. Check out the @BODOG.CA Twitter page for details how you can get up to $300 of free cash to play with now. Hey, don't forget, you can always find us here on YouTube. You can find us on all BODOG social channels as well. We're also on the audio form and Spotify. So when you're walking the dog, you can listen to Commie and Razor, and we're spinning all our nonsense. Also, the Hockey Illuminati, Frank Krupe, is going to drop by. We'll get his thoughts on what the Leafs did. They have certainly been busy at the start of free agency in this summer. But guys, I want to start with, from both your perspectives, the noise dies down after that flurry of free agent signings on July 1st, right? You get, trying to keep up, and especially with the way social media was acting with Elon's Twitter machine, couldn't even keep up with half of them on July 1st with the way things were kind of playing out. But when the noise stops and the music kind of quiets down with day 2, day 3, there's still some leftovers out there, not a lot of sexy names out there, but have you guys been through that sort of position? Have you been in that situation where all of a sudden you're like, okay, here we go, fresh, clean sheet of ice, and nobody's calling me? Razor, can you speak to that at all? Like, have you been down that road?
I have, and I think Tommy might have a different take on this a little bit. And as goaltenders, it's really bad if you're still waiting. It was the year I signed in Vancouver, and you're watching the musical chairs go. And again, as a goaltender, you have to get it done, because if you don't, it's not like more spots open up or injuries or teams figure out cap room for that sixth defenseman or that third line forward where they say, hey, just hold on. We love you. We're going to find a place, but we can't do it right now. The goaltenders, they get their spots, they pick their goalies, and that's it. And the year coming out of Colorado, I had a bad season, and I'm going to be a backup. I'm accepting that, and nothing really comes off the board. And I remember vividly that I was down in Boston. My wife's pregnant. We're going to a July 4th party, and I'm still not signed. And I'm calling my agent the whole time, because I know if July 4th goes away, forget it. And getting finally doing the deal, basically league minute, like whatever it is, that just keep me in the league at that point. And that's really stressful for a goaltender. So any of these guys that aren't signed are essentially burdened of thinking of PTO in the spring or in the fall, like waiting all summer, really not knowing. And that is really tough as a goaltender.
Are you realistic about what's going on at that moment from that standpoint for your career, or is there that false hope like, hey, teams are calling, everybody's interested, or are you kind of, okay, look, this could be quiet here?
No, you're pretty. I was real. Like I'm like, okay, Plan B. What's Switzerland look like? What's Russia look like? What's Finland like? I was at that like, all right,
Okay.
what am I doing if this doesn't shake out? Because there's 2 teams that need goalies left, and there's 5 goalies left. Not good. But fortunately, I got to Vancouver and didn't have to go to Russia at that point. It was, but you certainly recognize it pretty quickly when 3 or 4 names go off the board at 12:01 and there's only 9 spots, especially again as a goaltender, it's stressful, and you do have a pretty good sense of where you stand after the first couple hours of free agency.
Tommy, can you relate?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I went through free agency 3 times. The first time was fucking awesome. I mean, right away, 5 minutes into free agency, I had no clue, like, what my value was. I didn't know, like, term. I mean, I knew I'd get something, but I didn't know, like, what really it was going to be. And within 5 minutes, my agent called, and it was longer than I expected, and the first number was higher than I expected. And I had a couple of teams interested, so I was pumped. I think I had like 3 teams, I guess, although Buffalo never like officially offered anything, but I had Columbus and Atlanta basically like going back and forth. And looking back, maybe I'd do it a little differently, but whatever. At the time, I actually took a little bit less money to go to Columbus just because I hated playing in Atlanta. And like when I went in there as a visitor, I'm like, this place sucks. Nobody's here. I'm like, I can hardly get up to the game. So, and that was the only reason. The second time I thought I was going to have to wait when I got bought out by Columbus. And I talked to my agent, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we're going to be, like Razor was kind of saying, I think I'll get another opportunity, hopefully, but, maybe it's a 1-year deal. Maybe it's a PTO, probably going to have to wait a month, let everything kind of shake out. And that ended up happening even quicker than Detroit signed me there to the 1-year deal, which was a massive mistake on my end. But I mean, that was done quicker than the first time I went through, when I was like a hot commodity, so to speak. And then the third time I went through, this was after Detroit, so the next summer. I mean, these things basically went back to back to back. If I'm being honest with myself, I knew that phone wasn't ringing. I would have been shocked if any. I was like, maybe because maybe Peter Laviolette likes me, or there's a head coach somewhere that kind of likes me. Maybe I get a PTO. But by that point, I was already like, you know what? I'm not going back to the American League. Too old for that shit. Nothing against the American League, it's awesome, but I'm like at 34, 35, I'm like, fuck that. And I was interested in Russia, so I kind of already knew I was going to try and go over there anyways. So yeah, I can't say that I didn't really have a story like Razor where I was like stressed, because both of them happened fast, one way quicker than I thought, and the one that didn't happen, I'm like, this ain't happening anyway.
So off to Russia you go.
Off to Russia you go.
Okay.
See you later. Das Vidanya,
Okay.
NHL.
I want to get to Russia a little later on, but let's dive into
Sure.
what we've seen kind of on the landscape here so far over the last little bit here as we hit the off-season mode and things start to quiet down, the dust settles. I mean, I think there's still I still think that there's going to be some trades to be made, and we're waiting for other dominoes to fall here with some key pieces. What happens to Erik Karlsson? Matt Dumba is still lingering as we record this. But talk to me about the move that you like so far this offseason. Give me, I want to get the WTF move as well, but let's start with the move you like so far this offseason. Kami, why don't we go with you?
Sure. You know what? I was looking at this morning and going over it the last couple of days or whatever. I'm going to kind of group a bunch of them a little bit together.
Okay.
I personally, from a personal standpoint, I am excited to see these bigger, a little bit older, some of them a little bit slower, maybe defensive defensemen getting some term and some money. So like I wrote them down.
Luke Schenn.
Luke Schenn, like that guy. Good for Luke Schenn.
I never thought
he was really good. I heard he's a great dude. But he was like, I mean, he was basically out the door a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now he's got a 3-year deal again here in Nashville, making some cash. So good for him. I was kind of excited, kind of all like the defensive guys. I think watching the playoffs with like Gudas, and then the Vegas Knights. They had a big team period, but some big. You have to be able to skate. Don't get me wrong, but some big guys play some defense, get the puck out. That kind of seemed like it was kind of a priority this year, which from my point of view, being very biased, I was excited to see that.
Yeah. those guys got paid, right? Like
They got paid.
3 years, just under 3 for Shen. And, I'm happy for Luke. I mean, he's such a nice
Yeah,
guy. And for a guy to reinvent himself for, 4 years ago, you're looking at a guy who's in the minor leagues for Anaheim, right? And,
yeah. Good for him.
and clearly it wasn't just, playing alongside Quinn Hughes. I mean, he got the profile. He was likable in Vancouver and then was productive in the playoffs for the Leafs. And here he is getting paid in Nashville. Razor, what do you like?
Well, I know we're going to get to the Canadian teams here in a bit. So
Yeah.
for me, it's Orlov going to Carolina.
Ooh.
Carolina's D was good already. And seeing Dmitry Orlov up close for 6 weeks in Boston at the end of the season, this guy's legit and he's very underrated. 22 minutes a night, won a Stanley Cup playing those kind of minutes in Washington, plays physical, can skate with the puck. They got a really good deal, and that makes Carolina so much better and gives them flexibility. I know they don't have a scorer yet. Everyone's talking that way, but now they can trade Pesci for that score if they need it. You talk about trade Seaball, and Orlov makes that team better. And to add him with Slavin and Burns on that back end, that's Carolina got better again, and they had the cap room to give him $7 million, which most teams didn't. And he's the one for me. Other than Nashville was kind of cool with O'Reilly and Shen and those guys making those moves, but for me, Orlov, him going to Carolina, I thought he was going to have to go to Atlanta or Chicago or something like that to make his money. Carolina pulling it off makes them much better.
Yeah, that's a huge signing. I'm surprised on the term, only the 2 years, but he's excellent, and I'm with you on that one. For me, I'm going to go with the move I really like. I really like Matt Duchene going to Dallas.
Yeah.
22 goals, so he's certainly cratered from the 40 goals he had 2 seasons ago, but I think there's still a lot of gas left in the tank, and for that team with all that skill and that blend of young and old that the Stars boast. I think Matt Duchene is a great gamble at 1 year, $3 million. I really like that move for the Dallas Stars. And I'll say this honorable mention, another former Bruin. He was underwhelming in Boston, but I like that move with Taylor Hall going to Chicago. You got two
Forgot
former
about
Hart
that.
trophies. You bring Corey Perry and Taylor Hall to kind of nurture the young one with Connor Bedard. Nice piece of business, I think, for the Chicago Black. I mean, doesn't mean that they're going to be a playoff team by any stretch, but I like having
No.
two former Hart Trophy winners going there to help mentor Connor Bedard, and he's got something to work with some character and some grit and a little bit of skill to play alongside as well. But give me Matt Duchene. WTF? What's your WTF move of the offseason so far, Razor?
Well, it's funny because usually you get 10 of them, right? Usually you get why is Matt Duchene getting 8 years and $8 million from Nashville,
I
right?
like that
We
one.
all
Yeah.
said that, and we knew this bio was coming at some point. There's no money on the board. That was my WTF is how are there no trades? How is nothing getting done? How is the plumbing all backed up in the National Hockey League? The salary cap going up 1 million was a disaster for all free agents. Yeah. And that was my WTF was sitting there watching that tracker, seeing 1 year, 750, 2 year, 1.5, 1 year, 900. Blake Wheeler, 800,000. I get it. He was on a bio, but Blake Wheeler, 800,000. Yeah. Cam Talbot, 1 year, 1 million. Like the goalies and these veteran players having to sign for so little was my WTF. I was blown away by how little money there was out there for these guys.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I would say as for a specific move, and you know what, good for the guy. He got some cash. And I said it on Twitter. I think it was Twitter. I'm like, or maybe it was Instagram. Doesn't matter. I have the utmost respect for Steve Yzerman, and I got buddies that work in the front office.
Yeah.
So they must see something that I was missing, but to stay on the defensive end, I don't think this guy defends worth shit. But that Justin Hall, I mean, I thought things didn't go great for him in Toronto, and to waltz out of there with, was it 3 years, $10 million? That was one that kind of jumped off the page to me. And I actually did send a text message into the front office. I'm like, am I missing something here, fellas? And the response was, we need a right-handed D, and we think he's better than he was in Toronto. And my response was, well, I sure hope so. But that was kind of one that jumped off. Another one a little bit for me. I mean, I don't know why I'm kind of sticking. Maybe I just pay more attention to the defenseman. Now, I guess there's not a ton of risk, but the Klingberg one to
Yeah.
Toronto, I was kind of like, what, you got Morgan Riley. I don't know if you really need a guy like that that's kind of just dancing around out there, turning the puck over, can run the PP. I get that, but you already got somebody that can do that. That was another one that kind of jumped off the page for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, Toronto-Detroit symmetry for reclamation projects. I mean, Larry Murphy,
Mhm.
right, was essentially run out 30 years ago out of Toronto and ended pretty good for Larry going to Detroit. But yes, I think that's
It worked
certainly a
out all
head
right.
scratcher. You know what? You talk about all this, all these bargain deals, no money being there. I'll tell you what, the WTF, how about a couple of goalies getting term? When I see the
Oh,
term that Tristan Jarry, like, good for
yeah.
great for Tristan, but,
Great for the
when
fellas.
you
Yeah.
look at the last 3 years in that relationship in Pittsburgh with the injuries, I was stunned that Pittsburgh wanted to run it back based on what they've experienced with him and just the volatility in terms of the position of what they've experienced, and they doubled down and they give him 5 plus at just under 5.4 million. Like, great for Tristan Jarry, but Andrew, I don't know if you can speak to this better than I can, but I was just like, wow, like this makes no sense, but great for Tristan.
No sense at all. That's banana land. And you thought he was getting out of it. And it would make sense, right? If it was still Berkey or Hextall and these guys
Yeah.
drafted Tristan and they were still his guys. But to Dubas to come in and sign him to that, you're right, it made no sense at all. Complete shocker. On top of that, now they have
Razor, you'll appreciate this callback. It was shades of Jeff Finger for a moment.
Oh, Jesus. Well, they got the wrong player in Jeff Finger, right? I don't want to pile on Jed. He came right after me. He took the brunt of it once I left. So I know but yeah, poor Jeff. He had to sign the money. He had to take the money. It wasn't his fault.
Are you gonna say no?
And that's what Tristan Jarry is similar. Like, he probably was like, holy small, yeah, I guess I'll come back for that. I mean, run me out of town again if you want, I guess. Crazy amount of dollars in term. And then the fact they have Hellberg behind them, like they have 4 guys on one-way contracts in Pittsburgh in net, and it really is quite what the F.
Yeah, that's a quality WTF. Okay, let's go
quick
around.
Note on Jeff Finger. I've never met the guy, but
okay.
I love Jeff Finger. That guy made me about an extra $6 million. So Jeff, thank you. I remember when
what a comp! Hey, what a comp!
Jeff Finger. I got to be making more than that guy, and that's what ended up happening. So thank you, Jeff. You're the man as far as I'm concerned.
There's got to be an award in the Players Association for Jeff Finger somewhere.
He's well liked.
Yeah, and
to this day, people are comping Jeff Finger.
Jeff,
maybe that's what Hall did. Justin Hall, he went there, did that.
Yeah, no shit.
So there you go. We'll call it the Jeff Finger Award, the WTF off-season move going forward here on the Clearing the Crease podcast. Okay. Let's go around across the state of the nation here, across the country for Canada, with what we've seen in the offseason. The Hockey Illuminati, Frank Krupp is going to drop by. We'll dive into the Leafs a little bit more. But first things first, let's start with the Canadian teams. The Montreal Canadiens, I guess the biggest piece of business they so far, trading a first and a second for Alex Newhook. Like the player, it's a steep price, but I like the personality, and he fits with the timeline. Your thoughts on what the Montreal Canadiens have done so far?
I like Newhook going there too. I know people are saying it's steep first, second round. Who knows what it's a later first, it's a later, like, who knows what those are. And you get a young player who it just feels like it's a perfect reclamation for Marty St. Louis. It feels like Marty will be able to get to that kid and teach him and have him get to a place where he's really effective with that team and coffee. It just, like you said, it fits. It seems to fit. He couldn't step up for Colorado, but I don't think he needs to. He doesn't have a McKinnon or a Rantanen to live up to in Montreal. So I like what Montreal did with that move. Newhook coming in, I think he'll be a guy who puts a lot of points up with that kind of group.
They cut bait on Edmondson as well, moving him to the Capitals for some picks and take a little bit of salary with Commie. With Montreal, quick thought?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I did a little digging this morning on that. Coming back from unnamed. No NHL free agents. We got some more picks. Edmonton, he said, try and get his game going, and he fits the young crew. Worth the risk because, you can't sign any draft pick anyways. But yeah, they said they're going to give him top 6 minutes and try and get him going. So I think I actually kind of like what they're doing. They said free agents, screw it. we're going to try and develop some guys and get going that way. And so I like what they're doing.
Yeah, there's still a ways
As much
off.
as I love seeing guys get paid, a lot of times when fellas get paid, it doesn't always work out. So, but I do love seeing the guys get paid. So I like what they're doing in Montreal.
There you go. Okay, stay the course. All right, let's go to Winnipeg and the Winnipeg Jets. The first domino falls with Pierre-Luc Dubois going to the Los Angeles Kings. They pick up Velarde, Iafallo, also part of that mix, and Kapari. They also get a second. But, I mean, there's still more questions that need to be answered with respect to the Winnipeg Jets, gentlemen.
I mean, for me, and I think a few of the Canadian teams fall into this, and I don't think all of it is just due to the team's fault. I do think, and not to like piss all over Canada right now, but hey, look, high taxes. We got, Calgary's sake, a bad rink. You got bad weather, which you can't do anything about it. Some guys don't like the media. I mean, right now, Canada, and I'm pressing especially on those people don't want to talk about it. It's like, well, the tax, it's not their fault. It's like, yeah, it's not the team's fault, but that's how it is. I mean, you get the living shit tax daddy up here. And for a lot of guys, if you have another option, if you're a good player, why would you not? I mean, Ryan O'Reilly probably went to Toronto and thought he had to take a pay cut when he got his first paycheck. He's probably looking at it being like, oh my God, where's the rest of my money? But yeah, I mean, I think the Jets are in tough. It seems like, a few of those guys want out. I think that trade was like pretty good to get him out of there. And I think the return from what I've seen is pretty good. But yeah, the Jets, I think they're kind of in tough.
Yeah, it's like
They are.
when you see salary being retained by certain teams, like the CRA here in Canada also does a good job of retaining.
No, geez.
That article, not to get off topic, but I just read an article like a week ago where the CRA is chasing Jose Bautista, Josh Donaldson, and Russell Martin. Not a good look. I know it's a different sport, but it's the same. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
If you're trying to attract people up here.
Because that was always the talking point, right? Before you even started talking dollars, the first thing a Canadian GM said to you, well, we have CRA. So this is CRA. Oh, CRA. Well, there's a couple of things with CRA. One, you don't get your money. So yeah, good luck making an investment or buying a house wherever you want to live because you can't, because you have to put all your money in the CRA and let it sit there for a while. So that doesn't work. And now the fact they're getting chased around with it, I'm not even listening to anything that has to do with CRA and taxes in Canada. They're all in big trouble. Look, Matt Duchene, he brought it up. Nobody was going to Winnipeg for 1-3.
Yeah.
That you can't compete with Dallas. You can't compete with Tampa or Florida or any of these teams when these guys, Wheeler goes to Rangers for 800. He's going to play for nothing. You can't even live in a studio apartment for 800 grand in Manhattan, but he's willing to do that rather than deal with the weather or whatever else. So Canadian teams are, and Winnipeg, the teams that are struggling, you can't make a big jump. You got to develop, and that rebuilding process in Canada is so much longer now. Edmonton's in a good place. Toronto is Toronto. Montreal is Montreal. But these other places, they're going to have to build up because you're not going to attract these guys for a number of reasons. But again, number one is dollars. It always is.
It's concerning. Yeah, it's concerning because I think, look, Toronto is still benefiting and you're still seeing people wanting to go there as a contender. But and we'll see what happens with some of the other bigger markets, whether it's Vancouver, Montreal in a few years when if they find a footing and they become contenders again. But yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of Canadian players in the league, and there's a lot of guys who have Canadian teams as a no-fly zone for them as destinations, and it only seems to be ramping up, and especially with these tax-free destinations across the United States. I don't know. I mean, 20 years ago, they tried to put parameters in to try to help Canadian teams. I do wonder how you incentivize, or it just simply becomes, look, we got to draft and develop and kind of do it like those small market teams like you see in the NBA and hope you kind of hit the number with a generational talent like a Bedard or a McDavid or a Crosby at some point, Kami.
Yeah, and I was going to comment. No, I totally agree. And you know what, draft and development, I think, is a good way to do it. But still, when you can't get guys, when it's hard to get guys to come, that's not good. And I mean, I talked to a buddy, Cybul, maybe you can speak to this more. And like I said, it sucks because it's not really, it's not a hockey thing. It's not the Vancouver Canucks. It's a Canadian thing. It's a government thing. But like if I'm Quinn Hughes, I don't. You might not know, but a buddy of mine told me he can't even buy a house in Vancouver because he's an American citizen and they have some kind of foreign. Now I don't know if that's true. He said it, but if, like that kind of stuff is true, mean, that's a massive pain in the ass. For
Yeah.
getting guys to stay.
No, I mean, in British Columbia, this was an issue going back about 8 years ago with the housing market in British Columbia, where there were a lot of international buyers buying up property that drove the housing market to another level, to where it was just scorching hot, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
affordability is a major problem. And so what they've now instituted is what was deemed the foreign buyer tax, or an international buyer tax. And yeah, it ultimately impacts people who live here. It was kind of designed to try to be put in place for the individual who was buying it from overseas, but not hanging around here. And now there's the vacant homes taxes, and you're seeing all
That's
this.
right.
This
That one
is
too.
what everybody wanted to hear in a hockey podcast. But no, the point being
Right.
is, for somebody like Quinn
For tax
Hughes,
guys.
it's that sort of price now. It's the additional price, because you're not just paying for the sticker price to buy a condo or a home in British Columbia. If you're an international, if you're not a Canadian citizen, you're now looking at paying, the additional fees on top of that. And yeah, I mean, it's already expensive here. And, you're not exactly incentivized to want to buy property if you're a even for somebody like Quinn Hughes, who spends 9 months of the year living in Vancouver. So yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, I heard that Dylan's got like a really nice condo downtown Vancouver, spends his off seasons there. Was in Winnipeg, that's where he was last year, right? Winnipeg,
Yeah.
wasn't he? Yeah,
Brendan
he was
Dillon,
in
yeah.
Winnipeg. Yeah, and he had that Alex Chase on staying in his house. He's going through some big thing to try and prove that his condo wasn't vacant. Otherwise, he was going to get drilled with a $40,000 bill for a
Yeah.
vacant home tax.
Yeah, the vacant homes tax, right? And that was
Yeah.
so trying to
He's
create
going
like
through
just
some big thing. No, there's somebody in here. He was paying me money, and I'm just another hassle. Or you get
Yeah.
drilled for 40 grand.
Yeah,
It's
for
like,
$40,000. Yeah, and they continue
yeah.
to raise that. It's
Anyway,
unbelievable. Okay, listen, while we're talking British Columbia, Vancouver, tidy fair piece of business for Vancouver. I mean, for a team that's had a long history of trying to make big splashes that have failed at free agency in the last few years. Ian Cole, low term, Carson Soucy. Look, they wanted to upgrade the blue line. I think it's low risk and, potential for some reward here to improve this team dramatically.
Yeah, good culture moves, right? Rick Tockett's in there, so he has a voice now of what he wants. He's going to be there a while, so players like Ian Cole can say, listen, I'm going to play for Talk. I know I'm Talk's kind of guy. That's where I want to go. I can really benefit from that. So yeah, Vancouver, nothing splashy. They get out from Ekman Larson, or OEL, right? OEL.
Yep.
And you just have that culture shift. You can tell that that's one where they're going to rebuild. They're going to be better. Again, it's all about July 1st is all about who's going to be better and how or why and when. You're not sure, but Vancouver, you can say they're going to be better next season.
Yeah, for sure. Kami, how about the Calgary Flames? I think I feel like I want to hand an incomplete grade. I mean, the Toffoli move, I think that's not a bad return. What they get for Tyler Toffoli, who I really like Tyler Toffoli, but I think there's a huge logjam right now of what's next for Calgary. I mean, what a mission for Craig Conroy, stepping into a minefield already.
yeah, he's got lots going on here for sure. Obviously with the Toffoli thing, and you got no cap space. Huberter's contract's going to start come September. It hasn't even started yet. And then you got those three guys. Now, I think there's a few things. We already went over the Canadian part of it, but, there's also with the salary cap not going up much. And from what I've heard, next summer, it could be going up significantly. So, if I'm sitting here and I'm Elias Lindholm or Noah Hannafin or whatever, even just on the salary cap thing, like, why would I want to commit and re-sign right now? If I'm confident in my ability, be like, you know what, I'm one of the best defensemen on this team. I'm not signing right now. I want to see what happens. So it kind of puts Calgary in a tough spot where it's like, well, now what do you do? Because it's like, well, these guys don't want to sign extensions. They got 1 year left. I'm not judging him. Michael Backlund's been here for 900 and some games. If he wants to try something different, hey, you put your time in by all means.
100%.
But yeah, Craig's got his, I guess you start the season and see how it goes, and maybe there's some kind of market for those guys. And I mean, to me, it's just try and get as much return as possible, and in a way, kind of start fresh here. I think is kind of, because I mean, he's got no cap space. I mean, they literally just signed some minor league guys. I think that's it. So, Calgary's kind of through necessity running it back. They lost Lewis, lost Lucic. You could see that coming. So some openings for some younger guys, which I think is a good thing. But things, people are a little down here in the city of Calgary.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
A
this
little bit
unrest.
negative.
Yeah, and waiting to kind of see like what happened with Lindholm and where do you go with, whether Tanev and Hannafin, all of it. The Edmonton Oilers essentially look like they're going to run it back here, Razor. I mean, I like the tidy piece of business picking up Connor Brown, but I think it's just a case of, all right, can you rest Stuart Skinner enough to make sure he's ready to go in the playoffs? And I guess you got to hope that you can get Jack Campbell playing enough games to balance that load.
Yeah, and you hope that Ekholm being there all year will steady the back end a little bit more. You got to sign Bouchard. That one's going to be interesting how you keep him. And if you're Bouchard, you're like, salary cap's going up. I'm getting 95 points on that power play next year. Give me a 1-year deal, and then kablamo. So that'll be interesting to see how if they can get him on his extension, if they can. That's got to be a concern up there, because again, like we talked about, cap going up. Why would he want to sign more than a 1-year deal, knowing he's going to get 58 secondary assists, giving it to Draisaitl and McDavid? So that's interesting. But no, they're a good team. You got the 2 best players in the world. You feel pretty good if you're Edmonton and the Western Conference of being in the same position and 1 goal away here or there from beating the Stanley Cup champs. So they're in a good spot. They're realistically, they're in the best position of all Canadian teams.
Mm-hmm. The Ottawa Senators, a WTF with Jonas Korpisalo. They needed to address goaltending, but 5 years? I don't mind the $4 million, but betting on a guy who's never played more than 37 games, what's the logic there?
I don't mind it, and this is why. Because the cap's going to go up. They needed to get the best goalie in free agency, whatever it took. And if they gave him 2 years at $5 million, that would have concerned me more. Now you've got the term on the back end, so I think he's really good. He had hip surgery; that should be in the clear now. To say he's going to bring him to the promised land is pushing it, but I could see in 3 years from now that $4 million for a goaltender is going to be insignificant. That'll be almost backup goalie money if the cap goes to where it is. And they needed to get the guy here this year, because next year they need to make a real legitimate push for DJ Smith, for Dorian, new owners, the whole thing. I don't mind them overpaying term or a little bit of extra dollars to get what I think is the best free agent goalie out there. There's other goalies, but to go after a Gibson, he's probably not going to go to Ottawa. Hellebuck's not going to Ottawa. So you have to, again, as a Canadian team, you have to pay a little bit more, give a little bit more up if you want the best guy.
And
what's going on with the DeBrincat?
Yeah, and there's your whole Detroit thing again here, Commie. There was the thought that, Michigan kid, would there be a fit? And I guess Steve Yzerman not liking the asking price. I mean, I guess they've still got some time. There's still some runway here before they get to arbitration. But yeah, I mean, that certainly feels like a tricky one where, there was all the right things were said during the regular season. And clearly DeBrincat, it's funny. There's a young guy who would in theory fit with that group with Stützle and Tkachuk and Norris and Chychrun and Sanderson. And it's kind of like, you know what? I'm not sticking around here. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So, yeah, I guess it's figured out.
That's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one. And like you said, like Ottawa Center going into last year and even so going into this year, like they've got a core of young players there that I think are exciting and potential to be very, very like excellent players in a really good group. And so to have a guy like that is like, I don't know about this. That's not a great sign, but we'll see, I guess.
Okay, we're just warming up. We're going to dive into the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yes, Leaf fans, we're going to get to you. We're going to dial in with the hockey Illuminati. Frank Krupe is going to join us next as the Clearing the Crease podcast continues here, powered by BODOG.net. Here we go. We move heaven and earth. I'll tell you what, this show, the Clearing the Crease podcast, powered by BODOG.net. Commie, I'll say this. We do a pretty good job of finding the goal scorers to deliver. And here is another one. More than 400 goals, 408, I believe. Only 2 of them empty netters.
That's
wink,
what I
wink.
hear.
The one
shit,
and
I
only
didn't know
one
that.
of the best, one of the best in the business, and one man who loves golf just as much as Commie, Mr. Ray Ferraro. How are you, man?
I'm good. I came within about 3 minutes of totally forgetting this because I came off the golf course and I was like, oh, damn, I got to get going here. And so had to chop on the post round stuff. And
well, that would be the only excuse you could give me that I'd be like, oh, it's okay. He missed it. He's golfing. Where were you playing today?
I played at Seymour up in Vancouver. And yesterday I played at Marine Drive and been playing pretty good. I'm down a bit, but I would still be scraping shots from you, Commie. Always.
Wow, no. My game is going the wrong way. How was Seymour? Seymour is awesome. Marine Drive's good too. I've only played that once. Seymour a couple. You remember at Seymour, aren't you?
Yeah. It's tight and hilly.
Mm-hmm.
And if
perfect for your needs.
If you play lousy though, that feels like every hole is Mount Everest there. It's like you were climbing, but it's tight. It's a hard course.
Yeah, I remember if you sprayed a little bit, if you hit it fairly straight, whatever club, you're okay. But if you sprayed a little bit, you're done. You're finished.
Now, I've played a few rounds with Commie. He can tend to be a little loose.
Real loose.
That could be, but it's
big time.
It goes a long way.
Every once in a while it does, but it's real loose. It's like my weekends a little bit sometimes.
Sometimes.
A little loose. Yeah, once in a while.
Razor, I'm curious about one thing I've always wanted to ask you, based on, especially in the last 15 years or so, in terms of broadcast placement now being at ice level. But I'm curious, with the profile that you've carried nationally, both in Canada and the US, how many players call you out on things you may have said over the years? Does it happen often?
No, not often. A few. I mean, you can sometimes tell when a guy's sour at you, like he'll kind of gives you the stink eye a little bit, or they walk by you in the hallway and you're like, nah, I must have said something. A lot of times, honestly, you don't remember what might have pissed them off. And I mean, I played long enough. There were things guys said that you didn't like, and you're not doing it to try and stir the pot. I guess sometimes you could, but I'm not trying to do that. I mean, the one guy that I had like directly came up to me and talked about it was Matt Cook, and I had been pretty critical of the way he played, and so we were in Calgary, and he came up and he said, like, why are you all over me all the time? And I said, well, I don't like the way you play. I think you try to hurt people. And he's like, well, if somebody's in a vulnerable spot, like, why should I let them off the hook? Like, and you have to remember the rules were different then. Like, we might not have liked what he was, or I might not have liked what he was doing, but he wasn't really breaking any rule as it was at the time. I just hated the way that he would hit guys when he would come across the middle. And so we argued or discussed or argued or whatever for 5 minutes, and then he went on his way and I went on my way. And I mean, I could see he was trying to change. I just didn't like the way he did it. I honestly, though, I try to stay out of the way. I don't try to talk to too many guys. Used to talk to Tyler Bozak a lot about golf, loves golf. During the national anthem, always catch up on how he was playing.
During the anthem.
Well, it's like, the song, right? And but there, like, some guys like to talk, some guys just don't. And
so has anybody ever said, I heard that, like in the heat of the moment when you're down in the trenches and hey, I heard that?
No, but I've had 2 times that stand out for me, talking about a player while he was sitting right beside me, and it's really uncomfortable. One of them was Alex Edler. He had a first period in LA, and it was a debacle. Like, he was on for a couple goals against. He took a penalty. It was like one of those things. Everything he did was the wrong thing. So start of the second period, they come out, and the defense are right by the center spot. So he comes sliding down the bench, like, guys get on the bench and they just kind of scoot down, and I'm just about ready to start. And he looks over at the monitor and he's like, oh, that's me. It's like, I go, yeah, it's not going to be good. And he goes, oh, and we just sat there and I had to talk about what a mess it was, right? It doesn't feel good. The other was Roman Polak, and he took a penalty, and we were running the highlight. It was after he came out of the penalty box, and he was sitting right there, and I'm like, you can see the penalty, and he was watching, and you could see him in the camera, and he was shaking his head and going, no penalty, no penalty. And I was saying it was a penalty, but it was on the air. And so like I had to turn to him and go, it's a penalty. And it was actually kind of funny, but he is an intimidating guy to have sitting there.
Ray,
go ahead.
Just quickly, when we were both at TSN together, I was doing a Bruins and Canes series, and I think it was Gordon Pierre were up in the booth, and I was the rinkside reporter for this. Tommy, you might have still been in Carolina for this. Anyway, I think it was 2009, and I'm in the crowd, and this fan, we're in Raleigh, and this fan next to me is he's like, oh, TSN, what do you who you pulling for in the series? And I just kind of looked at him being the smart ass. I said, whoever wins, the sooner this series ends, the sooner I go home, right? Like, that was kind of the old media way. Like whoever wins it, I go home. So, I think I think Carolina was up in the series 2-1. So I'm like, so go Canes. And he's like, who's your favorite player? And I'm like, well, I like watching Stahl, and he was having a great series against Chara. And he finally brings up, he's like, what do you think of Eric Cole? And at the time he was struggling, right? And I said, well, and just trying to temper it a little bit, I said, I think he needs to start scoring. And no sooner do I say that, no shit, I'm his dad.
Oh boy.
And it's this could have gone a lot of different ways, right?
Right.
And I look at him and I just said, well, at least he's out of Edmonton, right? At the time.
Hey, Mr. Cole.
Yeah. So just walking on eggshells.
An incredible. How did you? Was it always for you to get into the TV side of it? Kind of fall in your lap?
No, it fell in my lap. It really fell in my lap. I was playing for the Islanders. I signed with the Rangers, and 8 months into with the Rangers, I get traded to LA. And so my agent, Steve Bartlett, gets a call from this guy that turned out to be like a mentor and kind of like he was kind of like he gave me a break. His name was Barry Sachs. He just passed away last year, but he was at ESPN too, and they had hockey. It was before it went away for 17 years. And he called my agent up and he's like, would Ray want to do some TV? I said, I know he's not going to make the playoffs. I've seen him do lots of interviews with the Islanders and Rangers. I think he could do this. So I said, sure, I'll try it. So I go there. I got no idea what's going on. I land at 3:00. There's all these meetings, production meetings. I don't know what any of it means. We sit down and we're watching the games, and I'm with Barry Melrose and Bill Pito at the time. And Barry was just awesome. And he's like, I go like, I don't even know what I'm doing. He's like, watch the games. And when we're finished, they'll come up with a bunch of questions and you'll be good. So I do the first show. I was wearing a light blue shirt, and it was impossible to find a light blue mark on it after. I had pizzas like from my elbow to my waist. I was so nervous. Brutal nervous. So I do the 2 weeks, and it's over. I go back, and the next year, same thing. Kings are no good. Miss the playoffs. They're like, would you like to come back for a month? And so that's really how I started. And after the second year, I'm like, geez, I kind of like this. But I was still just doing studio. I didn't do games, obviously, until I had retired. But one thing, so we're playing Detroit, and Yuri Fisher's still playing. And Yuri Fisher is a giant human.
Big.
Oh, man, 6'5", and whatever his weight was at the time. And there was a scrum around the net, and Yuri had me kind of like under the collar and pinned over the back of the net. And Steve Yzerman skates around the back of the net, and he's like, hey, Ray, why don't you analyze that? And then he just kept going. He was just trying to breathe, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, I got nothing to say here.
What would it's a great job. One of the reasons I think is because you say how you feel.
Yeah.
But imagine doing your job. I think of say how they feel, even at the risk. Yeah, maybe you're at somebody, but you're being honest and you're giving your opinion. I'm always things. I know you've been doing it for a long time, but your favorite part of the job, and is there a part of it that you so much?
Well, honestly, my favorite part is where I get to do the games from, like where I'm, I feel like I'm in the game without the stresses of being on the coaching side. Like those guys, to me, I don't know. I think I miss wins and losses a bit, but I look at how stressed they are over everything, and I'm like, man, that's a really tough gig. So I love being in between the benches. I love the speed of the game. I like I love hockey. So I think that's the best part. The worst part, bar none, is the travel. It stinks.
Yeah.
And so, people are like, oh, you get to go to all these cities. Yeah, great. So every year I'm away from home, 125 days a year. And that was the reason, really, when I was at TSN, that I stepped away from doing the World Juniors and the World Championships. And, I want to watch my boys play soccer. I want to be home. Now Cammie's assistant GM in Vancouver. She's busy too. So it's like I needed to be home a little bit more. And so, but the travel by far, that and eating press meals with a plastic fork. I should just take a real utensil, but I never have one. I'd like to think, so I've been doing this 20 years. I bet you I've eaten 500 meals with a plastic fork. And every time I look at it, I'm like, look at this stupid thing. Like, why don't I just bring a real fork?
That's amazing.
Right away.
Ray, when you look at, you break into the league at a time where everybody romanticizes the 80s and the high scoring affairs, and you had success. Then you carry over through kind of the dead puck era into the 90s as well, especially in the late going. When you look at the game today, I mean, you still managed to drop 400 goals for your career. Like that's a hell of a body of work that you've got. But do you look at today's game and think, man, my game would have translated well in today's game, or no, I don't think it would have translated? Like, how would you look at today's game now from both the analyst and yours? Yeah.
Well, outside of being too old to even think about it now, but like, I do think, God, it would have been way more fun to play in today's game than the middle 90s. Like when the Devils won the Stanley Cup in 95, that was like the start of it. Everybody went, wait a minute, we can check our way to win. Now the Devils, I don't think people quite realize the Devils scored more goals than we gave them credit for. Mm-hmm. But man, they would smother the life out of the game. I remember one game we're playing, and Pat Flatley was our captain with the Islanders. We're on the bench, and he's like, look at those frickin' guys. They don't even look like they're trying. We're sweating like hell just trying to get up the ice. And even if you could get towards Marty Brodeur, like to get through them, it was Stevens and Danico and Rafalski and Niedermeyer. Like, how are you getting there?
Crazy.
So when I look at the game today, I like how there's more of a emphasis on offense. I like that, like teams aren't trying to win 2-1. They're trying to win 4-3. I think my game would have translated. Eric, I don't know if you guys know Eric Brewer at all. One of the most sarcastic, under the radar, funny humans there is.
Yeah.
So every July 1st, he sends me a text and he says, oh, Razor, could you imagine how many sheets you'd be making today if you were playing in this game? He does it every year. I see the text. It cracks me up every time. Every time.
Opens up with that.
What's that?
He opens up for you with a text to that.
Every time, every year, every time. And it's like clockwork. And it comes, and it's from Brew. And so I get a laugh out of that.
I just said, is there a game that you like, that maybe you don't like as much, that you would change or adjust or anything like that?
Yeah, a couple things. I do miss, I miss the confrontation. I miss like maybe it was the same when we played. The season was so long and there were games that there wasn't much, in the way of internal angst in the game. But it feels like there's more games like that now. And I think part of it is the guys go so fast and the speed of the game is so high, you can't have both. And that's why the playoffs look so different, I think, than the regular season. Is part of the regular season, these guys are just trying to survive today, because it's, if you fall out of, if you're trying to play right on the red line, like of energy all the time, you're gonna run out of gas. It's too fast. And when we played it, it just wasn't like that. So I think I miss that a bit. I do miss the feeling of the super team. I miss somebody that's the black hat that everybody's trying to knock off. And I miss that. And the salary cap does that. If I could change one thing about the game, it would be each team on June 30th would be able to designate a franchise player for the next year. And that salary comes off of the salary cap for that year. And each June 30th, you can change it to a different guy, but that salary would be able to be outside of the cap. Now, some teams would use it, some teams wouldn't. It wouldn't really change the way the salary cap is calculated, because if Team A wanted to spend $11 million on their star and take it outside the cap, I think that would allow teams to stay together more. I think I saw something the other day. Tampa won the Cup in 2019. They only got 8 guys left. Yep. Like, there's no chance that would be the case if there was the opportunity to franchise somebody off of that team. You would
look at Chicago when they won in 2010, right? Like that 2010 Hawks team, I think they dismantled it.
Well, if you go back to the Stanley Cup banner raising the next year, they didn't have enough guys to hold the banner. They had to get a couple of rink guys to stand there so it would be flat enough to read. It was crazy. Wow. And and that's the cap is, I understand the cap. I don't love it, but I understand it. And I wish there was a little more flexibility around it.
How about when you look at what's gone down in the offseason here? Let's look at Canadian teams. What team stands out that you like? Do you have a WTF sort of moment as well in terms of what you've seen so far this offseason?
Well, I got to say, I like what Winnipeg was able to do so far with, with a lot of moving parts around there. I thought their trade with Los Angeles was really good, especially because everybody knows you're trading them and you can only, that's going to hurt your return. But Velarde's a good player. Iafallo is a really good player for them and for LA for a lot of years. And so they replaced NHL talent like pretty quickly. I like that. I didn't love the Leafs on day one. I like Bertuzzi a lot more than Domi. Like if I were to rate them, I like Bertuzzi more than Domi, but I don't know that the Leafs are any better. I think they're probably going to be about the same. They're going to have a great regular season, and then we'll see if their defense is good enough in the playoffs. Like
again,
yeah, right.
It's the same story. I mean, unless they decide to trade Nylander somewhere along the line here, like how is it going to be any different? And I don't think it is. I mean, Edmonton had no money, yet they still get Connor Brown. I think that's a good addition. Calgary's in a tough spot right now. Calgary's going to get worse before they get better. And again, like some of it's out of your control. You're Craig Conroy. Congrats. You got the GM spot, and oh boy, you got to water here, right? Like, what are you going to do? And I do like what Vancouver was able to do, because they didn't blow their brains out on any contracts. They got better with Soucy and Cole, and I think Bluger will be fine for them. So I guess like Montreal's in that transitional stage. It's really tough to say, where they're at. Their road is a little bit further. Ottawa's still in the soup a little bit. I like Korpisalo. I think he's an upgrade for them. And the reason I say they're in the soup, of course, is they got to deal one way or the other with DeBrincat and how that's going to play itself out.
Speaking of the Canucks, you guys might have been talking about it before on Zoom, but are you doing some sports here? Or is that or
What was that? Sorry, again, you're breaking up,
oh
Connie.
God, well, what the hell is going on? Wi-Fi in this rental sucks. I think that, speaking of the Canucks, and I don't know if you can say anything or not, or like, are you doing some of their games now? Or is that
We're trying to still work it out. I would love to do some. I don't want to do any more travel, right? Like I'm not into traveling much. I as of today, no.
Yep.
We're still grinding away and slowly piecing it together because there's a component of this that with TSN still as well that we'll have to work through as well. And so as of whatever today is, July the 5th, no, but I'd like to, I really would, to be honest. I'd like to, but I'm just not there yet.
Tell me this, for a lot of people, I know you've told this story elsewhere, but where in the HE double hockey sticks does chicken parm come from?
Okay, so this actually goes back to the plastic fork. I think this maybe was the start of,
started it.
So way back in the day, ESPN didn't have a cafeteria. It was just like ESPN used to be one building. They were building a second one, but there was no cafeteria. So
building 5, right, Ray?
Building 5 was the one you never wanted to go to. That was HR. Nobody wanted to go to building 5. And so they had this, like there were 3 restaurants in Bristol, Connecticut that was like that. Those were your choices. So almost every day, John Butchergross and I would go to the Italian place. It was called Volturno's at the time. And he'd order a bunch of different pastas. I ordered chicken parm every day. So we'd take it back and we'd sit around and watch the games and then change into our suits at 11 o'clock and do the show after all the games were done. Well, we had to interview a coach. So we were eating in our suits and I cut into my chicken parm and I go to eat it and that damn plastic fork broke and the chicken parm fell in the sauce and it exploded. It looked like I'd been shot or stabbed. And so I had this huge thing of red sauce all over my shirt. So we get on the air and Butchergross doesn't say anything till we get on the air. And he's like, hey, what'd you have for dinner tonight? We're on the air. And I'm like, I had chicken parm. He's like, well, show the people. So I show the people, I get this. So anyway, that was it. Butchie started calling me chicken parm. Pretty soon, I'm walking through the airport. I'm still playing in the NHL. Nobody says, hey, good game last night, good whatever. They're like, hey, chicken parm. So because I was a Slav, that's how I got that nickname. It was not for anything else.
That's amazing.
Well,
listen.
But you're remembered for that. Geez, fabulous.
Yeah, you get defined as that. Well, I can say this.
Remembered for chicken parm.
Yeah. Ray, listen, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it, man. It goes without saying, on a personal note, for the last 4 years, and I think some people may be familiar or not that play video games, but you and I have been broadcast partners with the EA Sports NHL video game franchise, which has been so cool to kind of, find yourself with kids and all of it. It's a lot of work. And then there's the whole how sausage is made. But I will say on a personal note, man, like people know how good and how talented and Kami, honestly, like you hear Ray, you see Ray on television each and every week. But the ability and the talent that this guy has above and beyond to improvise, creating and analyzing plays that don't exist that we create for the gamer, man, Ray, like just absolute respect for just how incredibly talented. Like 400 goals is no slight, man. And it's like that's incredible to do that, and then to become one of the best in the broadcast business over the last quarter century. It is. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know it's a busy schedule, and it's been a lot of fun working with you for the last 4 years too, man.
No, thank you. The EA stuff was so incredibly eye-opening because we didn't really know what it was. And then you start and you're like, holy smokes, man, this is way more detailed than we thought. So one thing that you've probably noticed is like James and I like to talk. And so we'd be talking about something and the producer, he was really patient, Danny, really patient. And every so often he'd go, guys, we should probably get moving. Instead of just going, shut the hell up. And get, like, he was so patient. And we'd be like, yeah, we should probably do that. You know, we should get going. Now, Tommy, are we going to see you on the golf tour this summer, or are you out?
I think I'm on the golf tour. Yeah. To take one.
You're back next year, eh? You're back again.
Glad. I'm just invite me. I will come. I think the date felt great for me. If there's a last thing, I might pop in. Right now, out.
We'll struggle through. We'll struggle through. I'm sure there'll be a commie or 4 stories told while you're not there to rebut them. And
yeah. I can't
know how that
myself.
goes. You know how that goes.
Ray, thanks for this.
Thanks, guys.
I appreciate that.
All right, Leaf fans, the Clearing the Crease podcast continues, powered by BODOG.net. We bring in our BODOG brother, our BODOG bro, if you will, the hockey Illuminati. Frank Krupe in the house. Frank, I got to tell you, love the roller coaster ride that I have watched you over the last 3-4 months on Instagram, whether it's knocking off the Lightning, planning the parade route. We've done that once or twice before in the city of Toronto, and then it all comes crashing down against the Panthers. But now, here we are, July. You got Ryan Reeves.
Ryan Reeves.
You got Tyler Bertuzzi, the other Bertuzzi.
Yep.
And Max Domi, all of it. It's all happening. How are you, man? First things first, how are you? How's your summer feeling?
You know what? I'm fantastic. I'm doing a lot better than I was on July 1st. Rinse, wash, repeat, as we say here in Leaf Nation. You've been watching me for 3-4 months, but boys, I've been riding this roller coaster for 33 years of my life here, and there's no end in sight. And I am fully prepared, excited, and eager to build my hopes up once again, build them all the way up. And you know what? Maybe the Leafs will get 2 wins in the second round next year. Maybe they'll win the Stanley Cup next year, which is paying plus 800 on BODOG. Grab those odds now while you can before they change, because I don't think the Leafs are done. And I think this is going to be different. So says the delusional Leaf fan for the millionth time in his life.
So
Frank, talk to me about a couple of these moves. Give me your favorite move. I mean, I got some opinions on a couple of these, but give me your favorite move that you like the Leafs made, maybe one that you didn't like.
Well, I tell you what, Commie, like
them all.
What do you? Not all of them, but if I had told you that Ryan Reeves was going to put a Leaf jersey on in the same year that Mike Babcock gets another job again, like, would you think we're living in a twilight zone? Like, what's going on there?
Good point. Very well put. Yeah. I can't disagree with that at all.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I loved. You know what I love most about these deals with the Domi and Bertuzzi? Some fans are shitting on the fact that, it's the 1-year deals. You only got them for 1 year. I love that. Give me guys in their contract year. I want guys that are even more motivated than they normally would be. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of guys sign 1-year deals because the cap's going up next year, so they're waiting to lock in. And like, these guys, I especially with Domi, I think Max Domi could really flip a switch here. I think he really could flip a switch. He had a good year last year in the playoffs, 20 goals in the regular season. And putting him into that top 6, like, when was the last time Domi was playing with real legit stars the way he is now? You know what I mean? So I think he's someone that could really flip the switch and could be invigorated playing.
I thought he was good with the Stars in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, he was good.
He was great. He was great in the Stars. And I'm interested to see how they're going to use him, if they're going to put him, obviously him and Marner played together in London. I do think that Bertuzzi gets slotted in with Matthews. Bertuzzi is one of those guys that has an old school hockey heart, and he's an upgrade over Bunting. He's going to do what Bunting did and more and add some offensive flair. But I mean, it's the most exciting move, I think, is Revo. That's the most exciting move. You know what I mean? His presence, man. And like, you guys know, right?
He wears shades like you, man. He looks cool with shades on, like on the IG, right?
No, for sure, man. Yeah. And I think that, like, okay, he's going to play 5 minutes a night, 6 minutes a night. He's not going to contribute anything offensively or defensively. Maybe a bit of a liability at times. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys that played here in the show. When you're getting ready to go out and take on your opponent and you're looking at who is in the lineup, right, on the other side, you're going to sit there and say, but shit, yeah, we got to potentially deal with Revo tonight. Like, he's one of those guys that just his presence on the bench, you are not going to take the same type of liberties that we have seen guys take with Toronto. What happened with Matty Nyes last year was unacceptable. Unacceptable with Bennett putting him into a body slamming him like Stone Cold and knocking him out of the series, and no one bats an eye. Okay, that type of stuff unacceptable. With Revo sitting there, our boys can freewheel all they want with their heads down in the neutral zone. They don't got to worry about nothing. You know, they can play their now. They still have to go in the corners themselves and make stuff happen. But again, and it's not just Revo. Domi's got grit. Bertuzzi's got grit. So I think it's great. I'm very
Frank,
excited.
to that point, and Razor, Kami, you guys can speak to this probably, but I remember talking to, some of the members of the training staff when I was covering the Leafs years ago, and whoever the resident tough guy was, like, their moods would change on a game day depending on what team was in town and depending on the personality who was in, whether it was, the late Derek Boogar, the boogeyman's coming into town, right? And it was, whoever was the resident enforcer, there was definitely a different mood knowing that, I might have to dance with him.
Well, and what this Revo deal is. I mean, we had Lucic on 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and everybody knew he was going to Boston. Toronto had to sign him for that reason alone. I mean, you can't have Luch running around on Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, in Toronto, doing whatever he wants to do against Matthews, and he would have. And he still probably will. Let's be serious. I mean, that's going to be electric, those two guys playing each other the first game, because they have it circled because of the rivalry.
Dance, right?
Luch is coming back.
Reeves, right?
They're going to be right. It's going to happen. And that's why the Leafs had to do that and had to give them 3 years just to get through this season with Luch back in the division. It's quite obvious. My question is, what's going on in net? I mean, the million old age question of the 800-1 Toronto Maple Leafs. That's great, but Matt Murray's there. Samsonov. Well, where do Leaf fans, where do the Illuminati want the Leafs to go with their goaltending?
Well, I mean, Matt Murray, he might get a visit from the Toronto underground mafia with they're going to show up to his door with a sack of doorknobs and say, "Listen, dude, you got a one-way ticket to Robben Island, and you're going to go there on your own, or we're going to take you there. So pick one. You want to make this hard or easy?" So I think Matt Murray will go to Robben Island, or they'll move him. They'll package a pick with him. Like, they wouldn't have. They're a little over $8 million over the cap right now. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't know they could get out of it. Muzzin will go to Longchamire, but that's a great question, Razor. Like, so people have asked me this. Yes, they're top six. You can make an argument this is probably the best top six we've seen, in this era of Leaf hockey. Okay, I think most people would agree with that. Their defense maybe stayed about the same. Okay, we can talk about that in a second. What we think of Klingberg and maybe the rest of the moves.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah, Vegas won the cup with Aiden Hill in net this year. Mm-hmm. Colorado won the cup with Darcy Kemper last year. Are those guys bona fide superstar goaltenders? They played great in the playoffs when they were called upon. They were great. They made the saves they had to. But if you look at our past two Stanley Cup champions, the goaltending again, it was good, but nothing spectacular in terms
Kemper,
of stars.
I'd argue had a track. I would say Kemper, I'd argue, had a track record, but Hill for sure.
Well, no. So just to go, so our Leaf fans is Leaf Nation going to be? You know what? It's okay. The goalie gave up 3 bad goals tonight. Like, we're over that. We're not even going to focus on the goaltending in Toronto. Is that actually going to happen? Because that's what happened in Vegas and Colorado.
The former Leaf goalie, right?
And that's where that's the issue, right? It's different. I agree with you 100%. I don't think you need a goal. I don't think you need a star goalie. But in Toronto, I do know what happens when the goalie gives up 1 bad goal. Yeah. It's a story for a week and a half.
It's true.
And that's the issue.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. We're still talking about the goal that Samsonov let in the first round, but
still talking about me.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I'm probably at fault for that as well. I probably mentioned you at times.
Yeah, for sure you have.
Of course I have. Yeah, it's guys like me,
Yeah.
But listen, was Samsonov the reason that Leafs didn't get past Florida last year?
No.
Right now, the guy on the other end was the reason they didn't get right. So you can make the argument the other way that having that Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky style can win you the series. But again, we've seen our last 2 Cup champs win on depth and team defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with Samsonov. I thought he played well enough in the playoffs. Again, like a couple shaky goals for sure in the Tampa series. He ended up getting hurt, and I think he's good enough to get the job done. Joseph Woll could spike. He looked really good to small sample size next year. And then the alternative is what? You go after a guy like Hellebuck.
Hey, listen, I'm excited to hear the perspective. I love it.
Yeah.
I look forward to that consistency.
Let me try to be the keep it real police here for a second amongst all three of you here.
Okay.
You're still right now in a position where you've kept the core intact, right? The big four, the core four, if you will. Is this a sustainable way to win when you're retooling what? Talking about a quarter of the roster, right? Or a fifth of the roster now in the offseason where you're bringing in, it's this revolving door, right? You had massive wholesale changes at the trade deadline, right? You made all these moves, bringing in O'Reilly, bringing in Shen, making all these moves. You beat Tampa, great, but that's not. It's the game's not to win a round; it's to win 4. And now here you are, you're bringing Ryan Reeves. Love the idea of adding the toughness. Love the Tyler Bertuzzi signing. Klingberg, and Max Domi. There's some nostalgia. There's some romance with, the second generation Leaf. Sure, there's a nice story there. But is this sustainable? Just bringing in, all right, here's our next wave. We're going to keep these same 4 guys with Matthews and Marner and Nylander and Tavares. Like, to me, at the root of it is still, can you win with that core 4?
James, don't piss on our parade, okay? I'm really excited here.
Hey, listen, July 5th. You had your 4 days. All right?
I hear you loud and clear. This feels like a quick fix. Let's put a Band-Aid on the real problem, which might be the fact that the core 4 are not gamers when it counts, okay? But at this point, whether it's sustainable or not, I think I speak for most Leaf fans when we say we don't give a shit. Let's just find a way to make it work. Whether it's sustainable, whether it's not, let's focus on 1 year. Let's focus on 1 year at a time. After this coming year, things could look really dour. Things are going to be tough. But let's kind of stay in the moment and just focus 1 year at a time. You know what I mean? My Leaf fandom is hanging on by a thread as it is. Okay, so you know what? Like at this point, it doesn't matter for me. Just find a way to get it done.
Just get it done. All right.
All right. Touching on the goaltenders a little bit, one way to make the goaltending look a little better is to have a good D-core. Give me your thought. Run me through the D-core, the Klingberg signing. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that the Leafs did. That's one where if you want to make the goaltender look better, I'm not sure if Klingberg's your answer because he's going to be giving up some opportunities. What do you think of a D-core heading in?
For me, I would have rather spent that money on a defenseman that is harder and tougher to play against.
That plays D.
That plays D, right? Like another puck-moving defenseman. Like, oh, here we go again. Like those guys do not do well in Toronto, as we know, in terms of the scrutiny in the media and the fact that we've all been yelling at our team to be bigger and tougher on the blue line. You look at Vegas, right? Like Vegas, they had 6 bruisers. They had 6 massive, hardy men that were all hard to play against. They're from Pietrangelo all the way down to their 6D, right? And that was the one where I scratched my head a bit. But at the end of the day, it's an upgrade over Hull. Okay, we'll take that. It's an upgrade over Justin Hull. That's fine.
Okay.
And he may right. All right, let's take the wins where we can. And he may be an upgrade over Morgan Riley on the power play.
Okay. He's good with the puck. I'm not denying that. He's good with the puck.
And it cuts Riley's minutes. Riley plays different minutes now. He doesn't have to run out there for 2 minutes. So,
yes. No, that's
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like Riley, for me,
has never take Riley off that power play?
Honestly, I would. Morgan Riley, God love him. He can't take a slap shot. I've never seen him take a one-timer. Okay, I don't know if Klingberg can do that. Riley had one great year where he potted 20. He scored some big goals in the playoffs. So you know what? Like he scores when it matters. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt that their power play is not quite. It's not fully meshed with him running it. I don't know. He just feels a little out of sorts at times running it.
Yeah.
I do want to see them make one more change on defense as well. Speaking of defense quickly, if I was their GM, I'd be exploring a trade for TJ Brody right now in some type of a traditional, quote unquote hockey trade, a 1-for-1, packaging Brody with maybe a spec or a pick to try and get an upgrade over Brody. As someone who, is logging top 4 minutes, man, there were a lot of nights when he got exposed and did not look very good in the playoffs. So that's the one other area I'd be trying to look at, is maybe moving him for an upgrade.
Last thing for you here before we run. William Nylander, what term or what AAV can you stomach? Or is he going to be a Leaf come opening night?
I think he will be a Leaf come opening night. And you know what? My tune changed a little bit on this after Domi and Bertuzzi. The Leafs have pushed all their chips into the center of the poker table. We're all in. I almost think it's wiser to take the risk with Willie, bring him back next year, and just worry about this next year, because I don't know how you're going to win a Nylander trade and get better. Maybe you could, but again, the fact that we know he wants 10, which is ridiculous because he's not in the same category as other wingers that are making that type of money. Is Nylander the same type of player as Kucherov or Pasta?
No.
Mark Stone?
No.
I don't think so, right? I can go on and on, right? But unfortunately,
he's a 40-goal scorer, right? In his mid-20s.
I hear you, but Willie is the most one-dimensional guy in the league. Okay, he scores goals. That's great. That's arguably the hardest thing to do in the NHL is put the puck in the net, but he contributes literally nothing else other than scoring goals. Okay, he played fine in the playoffs. There were some spurts in the second round. He was our best guy, but I don't know. I think you have to take a risk and worry about this next year. Maybe if the Leafs win the cup this year, they can talk Tavares into Robert Island, or they can convince Tavares to waive his no trade. Or you never know. Like if they win the cup,
have your buddies that visited Matt Murray visit John, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll get the guys to visit John. Like I'm okay with worrying about Nylander next year and risking losing him if it means Toronto is icing the best team possible this year. I know that might sound crazy for some Leaf fans, but that's what I'd do.
This is why we love you, buddy.
Hey,
thanks, Frankie.
God bless.
He is the Hockey Illuminati. You can find him on Instagram. He is an absolute riot if you're not finding him already. He is our BODOG bro, and he's with us here on the Clearing the Crease podcast, powered by BODOG.net.
Yeah. Thanks, fellas. Let's do this again sometime soon. God bless you. God love you. Plus 800 BODOG. Leafs are going to win the cup. Make sure you take that now before it goes down.
There he goes. Book it, people.
Well, there we go.
All right, lots of fun here on the Clearing the Crease podcast, powered by BODOG.net. Cybulski, Razor, Commie, and here we go. It is time for our fan question of the week. Don't forget, hey, all you got to do is reply to this video wherever you're watching it, or shoot a DM to @BODOG.CA on Twitter or the BODOG YouTube or Instagram page with a question for whether it's Commie, for yours truly, Cybulski, and Raycroft, if you will, the Calder Trophy winner. And if we happen to pick your question, you get yourself a free NHL jersey courtesy of your friends and ours at BODOG. So this week's winner, Adam from Richmond Hill, is asking, we all know James is the voice of EA Sports NHL Hockey. Razor, Commie, have you ever been in the game, and have you ever played as yourself? And also for all three of us, what is the best NHL game of all time? That is Adam. Adam, congrats. Don't forget to DM the @BODOG.CA Twitter page to claim your prize. Nicely done. All right. NHL, EA Sports. Have you guys ever been in the game? Commie?
So I used to be a big video game, not like big, but I would play video games a ton when I was a kid, up until I was in Columbus. So like 2009. And then I don't even really have a reason, but then all of a sudden I just completely lost interest and I haven't played a game since. But I used to do it all the time. My favorite game, the first one that comes to mind, is Blades of Steel from when I was a kid. And to answer the question about playing yourself, yeah, like when I was playing, that was when it first came out, kind of, sort of, where they had everybody on the roster and all this. So I was like all fired up to like, oh man, I'm on a video game. That's sick. So then I played myself and I was awful. I knew I wasn't a good skater, but like I was unplayable in these games. I couldn't turn. I couldn't catch anybody. I couldn't shoot the puck. I get in the odd fight. I get beat up. I'm like, this is terrible. Am I really this bad? So although it was kind of cool to do it, and it was cool seeing Commodore when I'm playing the game, I would just get roasted and beat up all over the ice. I'm like, this sucks. Then I have to just create myself and use my own name and make myself good.
Yeah, pump up the inflate the
trade
rating.
the real one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get rid of the real one.
I can appreciate that.
Oh, that's so good.
Were you a gamer at all?
I mean, not really. When I was a kid, 94 Sega Genesis, right? That's the ultimate. That's where that was my prime video gaming happened. I did play a lot on the plane when we had like the handhelds, and then I think iPhones came and that was it for me. So 94 Sega Genesis, the best game. Yes, like Kami said, like that's one of the biggest thrills to actually make the game. That means you're an NHLer if you're actually in the game. 04, I had a good rating. I had a good season, so I could play then. I think my kids like turned up my 08 rating, and that not so good. So they don't play me when they do that. And then I think I made the alumni one the last couple of years. So the kids had me on the alumni team over the last couple of years. So they think that's cool. That's really the only way they knew that I actually did play in the NHL was to be in the game. So again, really cool to be in it, but my experience is kind of like Kami's. It's hard to, I don't want to go up against Henrik Lundqvist or Roberto Luongo with me down at the other end in the video game. It's tough to win.
They have alumni now?
Yeah, I think they cranked out the alumni guys the last 3 or 4 years, right, Seaball? So they've got you got to call the PA or get a hold of Heels or something, Kami. Get back into it.
Yeah, I think
didn't know that.
think my understanding is, Kami, if you are a member of the NHL alumni, your name is effectively in the game. So, and if you're not part of the alumni, then you're kind of on the outside looking in. I think that's how they've kind of operated over the last few years. So, yeah.
I bet you're better now, Kami. The alumni, they gave you a 90 rating. Yeah, you can go
maybe
real.
I got better. Yeah.
Yeah, where do you find Kami in the alumni section? Columbus, Tampa, Ottawa, Calgary, Jersey?
Definitely Calgary. Definitely Calgary.
Yeah.
Canes,
There
all of it.
Maybe do they have the minors? Maybe I'm in Lowell. Could be there too. I was sick in Lowell though. I'd be good there.
You know what? I mean, you guys look, Blades of Steel. I mean, man, I loved playing that as a kid, and then NHL '94, Sega Genesis, Razor. I think he absolutely nailed it. So I'll go with a deep cut. There were a couple of NHL game or not NHL games, but there were a couple of games on the Commodore 64. But I'll just say for an old school video game, I'm going to go with, I think it was Electronic Arts, and they had their original hockey game. I think it was Power Play Ice Hockey, but you could choose from 3
stick figure.
players. Yeah, there was a fat guy, there was the one middle guy, and then there was a stick guy. As soon as you touched him, he went down, right? It was like you're basically playing 3-on-3 kind of hockey with a giant rink. Like it took you a half an hour to get from one end of the ice to the other. So I think it was Power Play Ice Hockey.
I like that one too.
There you go. Adam, thanks for a trip down memory lane. And then maybe the best NHL game of all time, maybe NHL 20, because it was the first year that I was part of the game. So
there you go, Seaball. There you go, Seaball.
Pumping my own tires because I can. Hey, while we have a moment, a big off-season move, Kami, you've addressed it on social media, but I'm just curious. Mike Babcock, Columbus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a few years since Bab's been there. He's certainly, I think there's a lot of people that cringe at this decision. And I mean, does time heal? Does time change? Give me a sense of your thoughts on this and where does the disdain come from? Because I think people bring up the stories of Johan Franzen and whatnot, but give me your thoughts on what goes through your mind when you hear about this, because you were kind of the first guy to really kind of raise concerns about Mike Babcock, and I think maybe people just thought you were a disgruntled hockey player, but clearly
people definitely thought that. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, there was
still
clearly
think I
smoke.
am.
Yeah, but where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and keep this short. I mean, I'm sure he's changed. He spent all of maybe 6 hours or not having a paycheck. So they really taught him a lesson. Literally the moment that contract ran out with the Leafs, the next day, he's the Columbus Blue Jackets head coach. Look, I get the disdain comes from a couple of run-ins that I had with him that, in my opinion, he went out of his way to bury me. The first time to bury me when I was young. The second time to end my career. I talked to him. I mean, he's a terrible human being. And even more than just my experience, I've seen him around and how he treats other people and not just players. He is an arrogant scumbag. I mean, he treats people terribly. I think he's a terrible human being. That's first and foremost, taking me completely out of it. The coaching thing, am I surprised that he got another chance? No, I'm not. That didn't surprise me at all. Do I think, I mean, it was never my intention when I started ripping this asshole 7 or 8 years ago, whenever he got to Toronto, whatever that was, 6 years ago. I mean, I enjoyed doing it because I hate the guy. I think he's a piece of shit. But was my intentions that, like, literally now I can't get away from the guy. Every time I open up a social media app, if there's any Babcock news, people are just firing in my face. I'm like, oh my God, I can't get away from this dude. But I mean, coaching wise, I'm not surprised he got another chance. Am I disappointed? Yeah, I am a little bit. I mean, I would much rather see other guys get chances, but do I understand why Columbus did it? Yeah. I mean, guys are trying to save their jobs. Hey, look, I mean, like Babs or not, he does have a good resume. He can run a practice, and he does know hockey as much as I would like to say. He has no judge talent-wise. I wish they'd make him the GM there in Columbus too, because I know that would be a disaster because he has no idea talent-wise. Can he coach a team and run a practice and come up with game plans and shit? Yeah, I mean, not that I was a part of any of them, but you can't argue with the success that he has had. So I get why.
Tommy, real quick. So, there was a former player who once said to me, who had played under Babs, who said, "He's the best coach I ever had, but he's also maybe the worst person I ever met."
I mean, I would say, yeah, I can't disagree. I mean, I don't want to call him the best coach. I mean, that really, really pains me.
Yeah.
But he is a fucking terrible person. Language.
And I think it's pretty consistently thought of that way. It's not just Kami. To jump in here, that Kami is he's the spokesperson, but there's tons of guys, and the Franson stuff has really exploded since then. And to a man, it's the idea that yeah, he's a good coach, but brutal human being. And I think the issue is, and we're supposed to all believe that being a good person, a good teammate, right? Good teammate. You got to be a good teammate. You're taught that at the age of 8. And the fact that this guy literally doesn't have a job for 35 seconds and then cranks it out again and makes another, the guy's up to like 75 million. It's nuts being a bad person. And I think that's where we all, take issue, I think, at times in the hockey world, because we are so defensive about our culture and what people think of us. And then this happens again. And that can be somewhat frustrating, I think, overall, because of what it says about the league at times.
I'd say 2 things kind of sum it up for me a little bit, like 2 points I'd like to make. Of the years that I've ripped on this asshole, at not one point, I mean, and I get ripped up online and you're a pylon, your career was shit, all this stuff. Everybody that's ripping on me they're all people who have never had a thing to do or been around Mike Babcock whatsoever. I have not, my phone number is around. There are plenty of people that worked with Babs, whether a player, assistant coach, athletic trainers, anybody that's ever been around him, and I'm good friends with a lot of them. Not one of them has ever messaged me and said, hey, maybe you should tone it back a little bit. It's literally been the opposite. The only time I get text messages from people that actually know him and that have been around him a little bit are like, they'll hear me say, man, I got to pump it. Like, I'll just say, I'm tired of this shit. I'm just going to kind of ease off. And I get messages every single time from guys that know him that are like, no, don't do that. Rip him more. He is hated. And with his little bull, I can't even watch his press conferences, so I have no idea what he said. But I'm going to assume he touched on something on, like, I've changed. There is no chance that he's changed. No. He's 60 years old. He's been successful. He ain't changing. And I do have it. I got a message from a guy who knows him real well, who sent me a message who said, he literally was he said, I heard your clip on Instagram. He goes, a buddy of mine works for the Rangers, and the Rangers interviewed him, and they didn't want anything to do with him because it was painfully obvious from the moment that he walked in that he ain't changing. It's going to be the same old shit. The only thing is he's going to try and hide it better. And he might be able to hide it a little better in Columbus because there won't be the media attention. And to the Blue Jackets fans too, hey, look, I go up on stage when I do these alumni things, and every once in a while the question comes like, where was your favorite place to play? And I enjoyed most of the places that I played. but I usually say Columbus. I have a soft spot for Columbus. I've got friends that work in the organization. I literally enjoyed being there, and a lot of guys apparently don't, but I enjoyed it. I do have a soft spot. You watch, if he has any kind of success, the first chance he gets, he will be out of there. He doesn't give a shit about the Columbus Blue Jackets. So the Blue Jackets fans that are ripping me too, I'm like, dude, just wait. The first chance that he has to ditch you guys, he is going to be gone. So I cheer for the Blue Jackets, but for at least for the next 2 years here, I hope it is, and I mean on every single level, I hope it is a complete disaster. I got my fingers crossed, so we'll see. I hate that guy.
Well,
God, he's a prick.
well said. There he is.
Arrogant piece of shit. Anyways, that's enough for me.
Oh no. Oh, we're not recording. Oh shoot. No, I'm just no. Well said. And clearly you're not the only one who feels that way.
No, I'm not.
You know, and I think there's a good reason for that, because there's a long track record and there's a lot of players who can certainly echo the same sentiments that you certainly have. All right, Razor, Commie, Cybulski, we got another Razor in the house. Ray Ferraro, 400 goals in his NHL career, one of the best analysts in the game, and my broadcast partner for the last 4 video games for the NHL video game series from EA Sports. Just a reminder, everybody, it's summertime, which means the ice action with BODOG is hotter than ever. New season around the corner. Get your early action in. Pick your cup winner for next season. BODOG.net has you covered with futures action that will keep you in game shape all summer long. In the meantime, BODOG has you covered for all baseball action. You can find props, game lines, futures. Make your home run pick. Score big with BODOG. Check out the @BODOG.CA Twitter page for details how you can get up to $300 of free cash to play with now. It's the Clearing the Crease podcast, powered by BODOG.net.